right. Hey, everybody. So, just a little um, housekeeping. Uh, the as I mentioned in my email, this is Friday morning, September 18th. So this is literally today. If you're watching this today, Friday morning, September 18th. My father was visiting my sister in West Virginia. He was very lonesome for her. He hadn't seen her since the global problem. And he was scheduled to fly back into New Orleans on Monday morning. And usually I record my lectures the morning of class. And that obviously got canceled with the hurricane. And so they transferred him to Houston. And being a good youngest son, I said, Dad, don't stress about it. You don't have to rent a car. I'll go pick you up. So what I did is, as you guys know, I posted a summer lecture that I did this summer on the muscles of the knee. You know what's really good is that in mechanics, things don't change. Like the quad is still going to do quad things, whether it's the summer or the fall. But I do like to do every video different because every lecture I do, I learn and I get better. And I want you guys to have the absolute best of me. So when I did that lecture, my plan was to do a live new hip lecture, but there's so many muscles that influence both hip and knee, a bunch, as you guys know if you watch the hip lecture. And I said, well, I was in a rhythm. Everything I do, I piggyback, so I didn't want to miss out on any points that I made about hip and knee muscles connecting. My point is that I'd rather you guys have the knee and the hip in the same time window than for me to take a knee that I did in the summer and then a brand new hip, and then there's not as much connection there. So I gave you guys the hip video that corresponds with my knee video. And today we're going to do some practice. We're going to make sure all this is clicking and to get you ready for your test. So Monday is new information. So muscles that I talk about on Monday will not be on your second test. Your second test is just going to be lower extremity muscles, uh, ankle, subtalar, knee, hip. And keep in mind, those hip muscles can influence pelvic girdle rotations, right? But from the perspective of the hips, you still have joints, motions, muscles influencing. So I might, if you're doing like a good morning, you might come up and I say, on your way up, you have posterior pelvic girdle rotation. Again, Y310 is a prereq for this class. I might say, you have posterior pelvic girdle rotation, and you need to be like, oh, okay, then I have hip extension. And I made that hip extension happen because of concentric work. I needed hip extensors, gluteus maximus, semimembranosus, semitendinosus, biceps femoris, long head, okay? So let's do some practice, shall we? Check it out. Press pause if you have to, but identify who's working because of why they're working. The cable is trying to abduct her left hip. If she relaxes all her muscles, you're going to see adduction happening here. If she keeps these muscles working, if she uses her adductor, she's going to throw her foot into the cable. We don't want that. She has to be working her left hip abductors, making the abduction happen through concentric work, letting the adduction happen through eccentric work, or maintaining this position through isometric work. Okay, so again, I'm going to keep saying it over and over and over and over and over and over again. Why do we not say abductors' function is abduction? The function of abductors is abduction. The reason we don't say it is because that's only right from here to there. That's not right from here to there, and it's not right if she's just keeping this position. Maintaining this position, no motion at all. Here to here, adduction. So you could see how somebody would get confused by associating muscles with motion. You say, oh, cool, left hip adduction. Must be the adductors. Must be the inner thigh muscles. She's working muscles that pull in the direction of abduction, abductors. And they are going to produce abduction through concentric work, allow adduction through eccentric work, and maintain an abducted position through isometric work. So what is the commonality of all of those examples? Their direction of pull. Not the motion they cause, but the motion they're trying to cause, maybe if that helps you. And again, if you've learned it the old, the not as clean way, if you learned it where, you know, your gluteus medius and minimus and your tensor fascia lata, their function is abduction. I'm imploring you to add pullers, abduction pullers. Because at least if you say abduction pullers, that doesn't assume you're going to have abduction. Abduction pullers can maintain this position isometrically. Abduction pullers can allow adduction eccentrically. And of course, abduction pullers can create abduction concentrically in this example. So 310 teaches you who's working because of why they're working, like we just walked through. 415 helps you to remember who are all those muscles that pull in the direction that I need. I need left hip abductors. It's okay that you have right hip circles because the muscles are the same. The muscles are going to be the same. So I need my abductors on my left hip. Well, guess what? It's the same muscles that the abductors on my right hip. Who are those muscles? Gluteus medius, gluteus minimus, tensor fascia lata, piriformis. The main ones. Okay? Cool? Let me go get to the next one. Okay? Here's your question. Here, start here to there. Here to there. Identify the group that's doing a job. Remember, unless your name is heart, like your heart, no muscle works by itself. Everybody has help. And it makes sense, man. You don't want to go all in and put all of your eggs in one basket. Well, you do it for the heart. The heart is special. That's why it's cardiac muscle. You don't have to think about it for it to contract. It's also very hidden inside for protection. And oh, by the way, if it goes bad, you're in trouble. So we have several muscles that help here. We can't, if we just identify one, then we forget about the others. So we talk about them practically in their group names, and then we can identify who's in the group. Here to there, external forces trying to adduct me. I need muscles that pull in the direction of abduction. My right hip abductors. We just talked about who they are, right? Those right hip adductors are going to allow me to adduct through eccentric work. Same external force, same agonist, variations in motion because of variations in contraction, variations in work. Here to there, same muscles. So how did we go from adduction to abduction? Those same muscles did different contractions. Right hip abductors through eccentric, right hip abductors through concentric, right hip abductors through isometric if you hold this position for a while, okay? Same muscles that we talked about before with that first example. If I didn't show you a picture, let's practice this. If I didn't show you a picture and I said working eccentrically, what is a function, direction of pull, was a function of the gluteus medius in the hip's frontal plane. All I need to know is what does gluteus medius pull in the direction of in the frontal plane? Abduction. It's an abductor. Abduction puller, right? Pulls in the direction of abduction is the long way of saying abduction puller. Pulling in the direction of abduction. Abductor. Abduction puller. It's all the same thing. Okay? Working concentrically. Abductor. Pulls in the direction of abduction. Abduction puller. Eccentrically, isometrically, concentrically, at rest. Skeletal muscles always pull, but they don't always contract above rest. Next one. Ooh, this one's fun. A lot of stuff here. I'll let you pause and let's talk about agonist at the right hip isometrically to maintain her position, and then muscles working at the left hip during this exercise. And again, when I say exercise, just like in 310, we are going to infer slow and controlled. So that way, same external force, same agonist. And it's not that, well, why do you have to? No, I'm just saying we're going to infer it until I tell you otherwise. Like examples in 310, doing as many jumping jacks as you can, or when you're doing something fast, or as many reps as you can, well, that infers you going fast. And you're going to have muscles that slow you down in the same direction as external forces. But here, there's no reason to go as fast as you can. Okay? So, right hip muscles, who would be working isometrically to maintain that position to prevent motion? And then left hip muscles, who would be working in this exercise? Identify these muscles as their group name, their team name, and then use the circles to help you identify all the different muscles in that group. Okay? Press pause. Welcome back. So, right hip, who's working isometrically to maintain that position? Her right hip adductors, right? And that's like the gracilis and the adductor magnus and longus and brevis, right? Your adductor group, your inner thigh muscles, right? Who are those? And then, well, hey, look at here. The right hip adductors may be working isometrically to bridge her position, but the left hip adductor muscles are also working concentrically to make her adduct against gravity, eccentrically to let her abduct against gravity. And then if she wants to hold a certain position over time for the picture, then those same adductors could be working isometrically. So once again, guys, over and over and over, I'm going to repeat myself until you're sick of it. We don't say she's working the adductors because of adduction, because adduction only happens here to there. But to go back, she has abduction. And to maintain, she has no motion. So we don't say the adductor longus is function is adduction, because that's going to get you in trouble. Because sometimes my gluteus medius is involved in adduction when it's working eccentrically. And so if you learn it based on motion, you're going to get fooled. I don't like to teach fooled people. Okay? So this is good. If you're like, Campbell, I get it. I'm never going to make that mistake. That's awesome. But I'm not going to stop repeating it, because that's how easy it is to get confused with muscles in motion. Okay? I think that's a pretty cool one. Might use this one for the test. Okay. All right. What if I start here and I go there? And on the test, I say, which of the following muscles is working and how? Okay, so listen to the question and then press pause. My shadow's kind of creeping me out. Listen to the question, then press pause. Start, finish. Rectus femoris concentric, rectus femoris eccentric. Semimembranosus concentric, semimembranosus eccentric. None of these. I'll say it again. Rectus femoris concentric, rectus femoris eccentric. Semimembranosus concentric, semimembranosus eccentric. Start, finish. Heck, you could even write those down and do your own multiple choice question. Rectus femoris concentric, Rectus femoris eccentric, remember, here to there. Semimembranosus concentric, semimembranosus eccentric, here to there. All right? First thing I'm going to do is establish who I need to work in this exercise. External force trying to flex me. I need hip extensors. And my hip extensors are going to be working the whole time because that cable's trying to flex me the whole time. My hip extensors are going to be working concentrically from there to there and eccentrically from there to there, but it doesn't matter. I still have the same muscles. So at least I've identified that I need my semimembranosus. I do not need my rectus femoris. I need to make like a Dr. Seuss story. I do not need my rectus. No, I do not need it while I move real slow. I don't know. So now we got to match up contraction. My semimembranosus is working. It is a hip extensor. The only way a hip extensor can be responsible for hip flexion, because when I go from here to there, I have hip flexion. The only way my hip extensor, such as the semimembranosus, can be responsible for hip flexion is through eccentric contraction. Eccentric contraction. The crowd goes wild. Eccentric work, man. So whatever answer choice is, semimembranosus through eccentric contraction. And if I went from there to there, it'd be the same muscle, just concentric contraction. Cool? Let me zoom in a little bit. All right, yeah, we're going to have to make some assumptions. But let's pretend she goes, or he, it's all good. Let's say we go from here to there as fast as you can. Start, and then I say go. And you try to do this as fast as you can. I don't care about what slowed you down, not for this question. All I'm asking you to do is identify which muscles would have sped you up, okay? Which muscles would have sped you up? And I'm going to give you some specifics, okay? Would you say a tensor fascia lata through concentric work, tensor fascia lata through eccentric work? Would you say gluteus maximus through concentric work or gluteus maximus through eccentric work? So I've given you a muscle and a contraction. I go from there to there. I go as fast as I can, and I don't care about what slowed me down. I only care about what sped you up. Okay? Tensor fascia lata, concentric, eccentric, gluteus maximus, concentric, eccentric. From here to there. Press pause, and then come back. All right. Welcome back to my channel. Here to there, what motion did I have? I had internal rotation of my hip. I had right hip internal rotation, and I tried to do it as fast as I can, and there's no external force there in the transverse plane, so I had to use my internal rotators. The piriformis does switch function after a certain amount of hip flexion, but that's why I didn't put the piriformis, because that would have been kind of tricky. You'll learn about that in grad school more, how the piriformis in anatomical is an external rotator, but if you keep flexing, you switch its function. So think about the piriformis as kind of running like this in the back, and here's the hip. So, I'll try to do it like this. Here's the hip. Piriformis external rotator. But if I flex enough, now the piriformis becomes an internal rotator. But the point is, I didn't ask about that because I knew that'd be super tricky. So I asked two traditional muscles, an internal rotator and an external rotator. So if I'm making the hip internal rotate through concentric work, I'm going to need my tensor fascia lata over my gluteus maximus. That's the point. Okay, maybe you got tricked on this because you saw the foot going out and you thought this was external rotation. That's probably what I'm going to try to get you in. But if you didn't fall asleep at 310, you knew that this is internal rotation of the right hip. Cool? Okay, let's see. How about if I do isometric left hip adductors? We already talked about who those are. What if I say from here you observe abduction during this exercise? So again, there's no reason to go as fast as you can. During this exercise, you observe left hip abduction. Do you see the temptation? Ooh, abduction, must be abductors. Adductors. Left hip adductors, eccentrically for the ab, concentrically for the ad. Right hip adductors isometrically to maintain that position. Well, that's inferring that he's getting his hip up off the ground. He could just be resting his leg there, you know. So I would have to give you more information to make sure you knew that that leg was actually splinting them up like a bridge, right? Like a plank. Cool. External force trying to abduct me. I need my adductors. 415 taught me who those were. Right hip adductors through concentric work. Right hip adductors through eccentric work. Right hip adductors through isometric work if I just maintain this position. The muscles don't change in this exercise because the external force didn't change in this exercise. So again, be wary of associating muscles with motion. Right hip adductors, adductor magnus, longus, brevis, gracilis. Okay. All right, what if I did a question like this? If from this position, she starts to flex her left hip, which identify a muscle that would be stretching. And I might just give you two. I might give you a flexor and an extensor. I may say if she starts to flex her hip in this position, which muscle would be stretched more? And I might say the rectus femoris or the semimembranosus. Well, if she starts flexing, the rectus femoris is going to get shorter and the semimembranosus is going to get longer. So the semimembranosus would be stretched, right? We can look at multiple crossing muscles, biarticular muscles a lot with the hip that cross into the knee, right? So think about length tension and how that would affect if you're doing like a leg extension. Watch, let me pull one up and then we'll talk about it. Okay, I just want you to imagine that you were doing, now remember, we talked about this in chains. The machine itself is maintaining certain body positions so that you can only, so that you're more likely to just move the knees, okay? External force trying to flex you. I need my knee extensors. Who are my knee extensors? Vastus medialis, lateralis, vastus intermedius, rectus femoris. But the rectus femoris crosses the hip joint, hip and knee. It's a hip flexor, knee extensor. What I want to show you kind of how length tension works. Just your body knows so much stuff. Your body really understands the physics. We just got to get your mind to communicate what your body already knows. If you were trying to do a max, let's say, or you're just fatigued and you're trying to get that last rep in, and you're struggling, and this padding wasn't back here to kind of maintain your pelvic and trunk position, your instinct would be to lean back, to posteriorly pelvic girdle rotate. Because by posteriorly pelvic girdle rotating, you're extending the hip. And in a flexed position, that rectus femoris is on slack. So again, if you have a TheraBand and your rectus femoris is on slack, it's not pulling as much on the other side because of the stretchy stuff, the rubber band-like materials. So if you lean back, it's going to pull more on the other end. So your instinct to want to lean back to get that extra oomph is specifically because of the biarticular nature of the rectus femoris. It's a hip flexor and a knee extensor. So if I extend my hip, it's going to pull more as a knee extensor on the other end because of the stretchy rubber band-like materials. Okay? Pretty cool. Right? So standard kind of questions we're going to have on that second test. I already emailed you guys about that information. Functions of individual muscles. What does the piriformis do? What does the tensor fascia lata do? What do the anterior fibers of the gluteus medius and minimus do? All function questions are based in anatomical position because all of your circles are written in anatomical position. And how do I stretch a rectus femoris at the hip? I need to extend my hip, just that kind of stuff, right? That also explains why if you extend your hip by itself, you feel those muscles in the front. But if you extend your hip and bend your knee and flex your knee, man, you talk about if somebody does that for you and prevents you from cheating, it feels like that muscle's about to rip out of your bone. That's your rectus femoris being lengthened at two ends. Okay. All right, I hope this has helped. On Monday, I'm going to go into the wrist, brand new stuff, not on your second test, okay? So it's important to stay up with the information, but I'm giving you time to really absorb and practice these concepts so that everybody can make an A on that second test. All right, guys, be well.